everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Chasing Labels, or rather, spine number 140 of Chasing Labels. This is once again my second solo outing of this venture. Last time was my first solo outing, and I thought it went pretty okay. I learned some new things that I have to do when it comes to kind of the whole cadence of it all, the whole thing about not speaking too fast and the rhythm of it all and all that kind of stuff. It's a lot different when you're doing this yourself versus doing it with someone else, someone you can, balance off of, someone you can, kind of rely on if you need to take a break for a second or two. All of those things, when you've been doing it for so long in one way, you get used to it. So you don't really, um, you know, you kind of forget how to do things by yourself. You know what I mean? Since you rely on something else. But we are back here once again to another episode, like I said, of Chasing Labels. And I hope all of you are enjoying or have enjoyed your Memorial Day weekend here on the East Coast. It is 9 o'clock, so things are, I believe, winding down for most of us. If you are not in the United States, therefore not celebrating Memorial Day, hopefully your Monday went well. If it's not Monday for you, if it's Tuesday, hopefully your Tuesday's going well. Regardless of what day you're listening to this, what time in the future that you're listening to this, thank you for listening. As always, this is going to be a very interesting episode. A lot happened in the last 2 weeks, of course. But before we get to the announcement news that we've gotten over the last little while with all of these bunch of labels and such, I do want, of course, send our condolences and just genuine sorrow for the loss of someone probably near and dear to many people within the community. Whether you knew this individual or not, the great Lee Gambin unfortunately suddenly passed away. And he is someone who Stephen and I haven't never got to know directly. We never got to talk with him directly, but we knew people who did get to do so, people who got to work with him within the community, people who got to talk with him, become friends with him. Of course, we want to send our deepest condolences to everyone close to him, most especially his family and loved ones and all of that. And I know just from our perspective here on Chasing Labels, from the very beginning of the show, he has always popped up on various individual releases that we've talked about from various labels all across the boutique label world. And it was very astounding to see just the outpouring of just love and condolences and remembrances and a genuine tribute to Lee Gambin, someone who was a historian, a writer, loved movies. He loved, of course, having a great passion for movies and having a great passion for doing the work that he did over these several years. I know there's so much of his work out there for us to consume, and I think as long as his work exists, I feel like his spirit exists within that work. And of course, his spirit and love for movies will live on in everyone who's ever loved movies. So, life can be very tragic, very sudden. And it really goes to show that you should cherish every moment and cherish everyone within your life. It's never a dull moment, or there's never a missed opportunity to tell somebody how much you indeed care about them, because you just never know when they will be gone. So we do want to wish our deepest condolences to the family and friends of Lee Gambin and just everyone affected by his great loss. Of course, so much great work of his to consume. If you haven't gotten to his work yet, or if you just know of him and you want to get to his work, there's probably tons of it out there. So, and a very sorrowful way to start this show, a very sorrowful way to start the previous show as well. But unfortunately, real life can impede on the things we love. So um, here on Chasing Labels, we will, of course, honor him by still continuing to talk about the movies and things that he loved. So, without further ado, let's get into what the announcements have been for the last, 2 weeks or so. Let's move into one of the slates. Let's just jump right in. Let's dive right into the Umbrella slate. Umbrella has changed up their model and changed up their way of doing things over the last little while. I know when we had Ari Harrison on a little while ago, it was probably I don't know, the years keep running into one another these days. But we when he had him on, I know they were in the midst of changing things up. They had so many labels, so many things going. Now their slates are a little bit smaller, a little bit more focused, and they're really into giving us these deluxe, amenities and whatnot. So there is a slate of movies from Umbrella Entertainment, and they are The Chain Reaction from 1980, The Emu War from 2023, Irresistible from 2006, Goodnight Mommy from 2014, and The Disorder from 2024. I believe all of these are coming with super deluxe collector's editions with extra goodies. I think except for looks like, look, I think they all are. Yes, they all are. So scratch whatever I was gonna say about that. But for me, the main highlights of this slate of movies from Umbrella is going to be The Chain Reaction is an interesting film. I had never heard of it before, but the premise of it seemed a little familiar. It's apocalyptic type times, set in the 80s. So, an earthquake in rural Australia causes a dangerous leak at Waldo, a nuclear waste storage facility. Heinrich Schmidt, an engineer badly hurt in the accident, knows that the leak will poison the groundwater for hundreds of miles around and wants to warn the public. However, of course, big corporation doing bad things to the environment and to things like that, they obviously don't want it to get out. So what happens is this scientist escapes from this facility in the chain reaction, and he basically hides out with these people in the woods while slowly the effects of this biochemical release from this factory, this company gets released, and he's been affected by it, and they're trying to hunt him down. He's trying to stay hidden. The movie has kind of an exploitation vibe to it. I don't know if it is considered an exploitation film. It did come out in 1980, which seems like right in that exploitation wheelhouse. I don't know. I'm still a relative newbie when it comes to exploitation, so I'm not sure what constitutes an exploitation versus what doesn't. All I can say is that this film has Mad Max type of moments in it. There's great car chase sequences in it that are really good. Like the Mad Max car chase sequences, the loud engines, great editing, the great action, special effects and stunt work with the cars and with the people, all that kind of stuff. Those are the highlights for me in this movie. And of course, there's a whole environmental thing out there. There's a whole like, don't trust big corporation type of message that's in the film as well. It's an okay film. I just mentioned Mad Max. George Miller was a producer on the Chain Reaction, so uh, there you go. There's the direct connection to the Mad Max and exploitation, right there. Um, I think it's a pretty good film. If you're into kind of that exploitation type of stuff, it's yeah, it's entertaining. Check it out if you haven't seen it yet. It may be available to stream somewhere. I should probably check up on that. Um, yeah, the chain reaction. Let me see if it's available to stream anywhere. Yeah, it's available on Canopy. It's available on Plex, so you can watch it with tons of ads. Really, Plex I think is the worst of the streaming services when it comes to having ads. At least in my opinion, Tubi is up there, but at least Tubi it's less than, with Plex, you're gonna get like 8 or 10 ads every time you watch a movie. It's there's a plethora of them. But you can check out that movie on either Plex or Canopy. So moving on from there, let's move on to another of these films. I want to talk about Irresistible. Irresistible is kind of this romantic psychological thriller from the mid 2000s starring um who's it star? Oh, Susan Sarandon as well as um who is also in the movie? I think it's Sam Neill. Yeah, it's Sam Neill, Susan Sarandon, and Emily Blunt. It's the three names probably many of us know. A much younger Emily Blunt in this film. I believe this was a year before The Devil Wears Prada comes out, so she's very young in this film. She's really good in the movie. Susan Sarandon, I think, is good. Sam Neill, I think, is good. The problem for me is the movie is kind of it's a kind of dull for a movie that's supposed to be this kind of thriller. So the premise of this movie is such: a wife and mother, portrayed by Susan Sarandon, is consumed by the thought that her husband's coworker is trying to win him away from her and their family. That husband's coworker happens to be Emily Blunt, Sam Neill being the husband, of course. And what you get is kind of moments of paranoia, moments of delusion, or perhaps maybe there's something real to that. That's kind of how they play up the whole suspense and question about it all. So you get that thriller aspect of it. The movie has a lot of random moments, a lot of random things in it that are kind of jarring and out of place, I would say, when it comes to kind of Susan Sarandon's paranoia and things like that. But if you like, these three people, in a movie, Susan Sarandon, Sam Neill, and Emily Blunt, check it out. I mean, check it out. It's got that 2000s thriller vibe to it, but it's a movie whose premise we've seen before. You know what I mean? We've seen these types of movies before. So moving on from there, I do want to mention another one on this list here from Umbrella, Goodnight Mommy. Goodnight Mommy is a movie that has been out here for a few years. By out, I mean like we've had a Blu-ray here in the US for a while. The difference between that one and this one, I believe, is we are going to be getting. Yeah, there's a audio commentary with critic and writer Alexandra Heller Nicholas, and a video essay by Andy Marshall Roberts. Those are brand new special features to this release from Umbrella. Goodnight Mommy is an interesting psychological horror film. It's a movie I haven't seen in a few years, so please, excuse me for having a little rust on the mind. The movie came out in 2014, and it is a German horror film. So you're going to have to read subtitles unless you're fluent in German, which I don't mind subtitles at all. And yeah, so the movie is in the heat of the summer, a lonesome house in the countryside between woods and cornfields lives 9-year-old twin brothers who are waiting for their mother. When she comes home, bandaged after cosmetic surgery, nothing is like before. The children start to doubt that this woman is actually their mother. So what we're getting here is um a horror film with scary children in it. So if you think kids can be creepy in horror films, Goodnight Mommy is for you. And so what you get is kind of this escalation of like frightening sequences where they don't believe that this woman is their mother because they can't see her face, which brings up a whole host of like themes and ideas that I find rather interesting. This idea of identity being in, um, the appearance of something. You know what I mean? Specifically when it comes to children, children identifying, physical attributes. That's how they kind of, they understand the difference between things. And that's kind of maybe the difference, how we understand the difference between things as adults as well. Our eyes are one of our, several senses that we need to kind of identify the world and judge the world. And sometimes we judge things wrong, sometimes we judge things right. But what happens if that kind of gets thrown out of balance, specifically at a young, impressionable age, as children are? Yeah, it's an interesting film. It's a really good horror film. If you haven't seen it before, highly recommend it. I don't know if they were going to do an English language remake of it. I think they did. Yeah, they did an English language remake of it in 2022. I would recommend seeing the original before seeing the remake. That seems to be my thing when it comes to, English language remakes of any film. I kind of always want to see the original first and then see, the remake afterward. So that's my thing. So that is it from Umbrella. Um, yeah, the other films I unfortunately did not get to see, that being The Demon Disorder, which is brand new from this year. I know John Noble is in that film. So if you're a fan of the show Fringe, or if you're a fan, of course, he played Lord Denethor in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. John Noble is always a great actor, so that immediately piqued my interest. But it's not really available to stream anywhere or to watch anywhere, other than, of course, this Blu-ray here. So moving on from there, let's move over to Imprint. Why not? The next tab I have over. So Imprint, of course, has their August slate. I just want to make sure to mention that that the Umbrella releases were their September slate. So we're moving through time here. We're moving through time. The Australian label Imprint Films has announced its August slate of Blu-ray releases. We have Crossplot from 1969, Banning from 1967, Jessica from 1962, Synonym from 1965, Woman of Straw from 1964, and The Taming of the Shrew from 1967. You may have noticed a bit of a theme with all of these movies. They all came out in the 1960s. These are all 1960s films. So you got like a little swinging 60s slate here. What is interesting about this slate here, for me personally, The Taming of the Shrew is a film starring Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton. I believe this is making its Blu-ray debut. It's never been on Blu-ray before. It's only ever been on DVD. I know that because I saw the DVD in stores all the time over the last like decade or so, and I'm like, when is that movie going to get a Blu-ray release? Well, lo and behold, here it is. So, The Taming of the Shrew, for those of you who don't know, this is an adaptation of a Shakespeare play of the same name. It's been adapted several times. If you've seen the movie, uh, if you've seen the movie starring um, Heath Ledger and Julia Stiles called 10 Things I Hate About You. That is a relatively modern day adaptation of 10 Things I Hate About You. A high school version of it done 25 years ago, but the rules still apply. The story is still kind of apply. The adaptation is still there. It's interesting to think that, 1999 and 2000 wouldn't be considered modern day anymore. That's fascinating to me. Um, so modern, so back to Taming of the Shrew. If you haven't, if you're not familiar with the play, if you don't know the play, basically, um, the premise is that there is this young woman whom everyone is like dolting themselves after. There's these three suitors. They all want to marry her. They all are just absolutely head over heels in love with this young woman. Unfortunately, she cannot get married until her older sister gets married. Her older sister here, portrayed by Elizabeth Taylor, and she is considered a shrew. She is considered a woman who is rather mean, rather, icy cold, not very loving, not very caring, doesn't want anything really to do when it comes to men and marriage and love and any of those things. So she has this reputation of being very, very difficult. So one of these suitors convinces a man to basically wed her. He basically kind of bets him to do it, and the man happens to be portrayed by Richard Burton. And the movie and the play itself is incredibly misogynistic, incredibly um, uh, unpolitically correct, if you will. It's known for being a very misogynistic story, and it is because essentially in the play and in the film, uh, they the Richard Burton character, or the man who's courting and basically forcing to marry him, kind of just like tortures the woman into obedience, which is a horrible, horrible story. It's a horrible way for any relationship to go. What I find most interesting about the movie is in its chauvinism, in its misogyny, it unfortunately, it can be very modern in that aspect. It can this idea of misogyny and chauvinism and treating women in terribly abusive ways kind of goes through all the way to this day, and I believe this play goes back all the way to the late 16th, early 17th century, if my research is correct. There's been a bit of debate about when it was written, but still, you understand what I'm saying, several hundred years ago, and yet these themes still permeate our lives. So it's an interesting story. I can tell just from the other adaptations I've seen of The Taming of the Shrew. um, yeah, they've softened that aspect of it greatly, greatly. They've definitely turned it into a more less harsh story in terms of the misogyny, in terms of the chauvinism. So that's very interesting. I will say this: Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton are absolute powerhouses in this film. It's just the way in which they are able to handle the Shakespearean dialogue. Um, it leaps right off of the screen. Powerful performances, just it's like you're watching a Broadway performance of this on screen. It's really incredible. The set design, the art design, the costuming, all of that. So obviously, it's a period piece, brilliantly, beautifully well done of a film. Obviously, the subject matter being, what it is. But yeah, this is definitely something I want to add to my collection. I've been trying to collect all of Elizabeth Taylor's films, but I'm of course waiting for the Blu-rays. So that is The Taming of the Shrew from 1967. Let's move on to something else, though massively different. Actually, let me see what we got for special features from Taming of the Shrew before we move on to some of these other films. Um, so we've got, unfortunately, nothing. Unfortunately, all we've got here is theatrical trailer. So unfortunately, no special features for The Taming of the Shrew. But let's move on to Woman of Straw. So Woman of Straw stars Sean Connery and Gina Lollobrigida. It's a British melodrama. And so yeah, British melodrama of which Sean Connery plays a bad guy in it. He plays kind of a skeevy, slimy bad guy in it. So so Sean Connery is the nephew of this wealthy, rich guy, and Gina Lollobrigida is hired as this elderly man's basically live-in nurse to take care of him and whatnot. And um, Sean Connery is basically trying to scheme his way to get his uncle's fortune. He's trying to find a way in which he can be left all of his wealth and business and all that kind of stuff. So he enlists the help of the Gina Lollobrigida character to marry the uncle, get all of the money in an adjusted will, and then eventually they're gonna split up, team up, and they're gonna come together as a couple and whatnot. There's a whole big thing about him like seducing her and all that kind of stuff. You understand what I'm saying? Backstabbing and whatnot. But yeah, Sean Connery is such a slimy guy in this movie. Um, but Gina Lollobrigida is really, really good. The movie reminded me a lot of Lady from Shanghai. I don't know why specifically. I just got that vibe to it. It had that little, maybe a little neo noir tinge to it, or noir tinge to it. But yeah, so that's Woman of Straw. So moving on from Woman of Straw, I do want to mention another film here called Banning. So Banning is an interesting movie starring Robert Wagner, and Robert Wagner is an he's like an ex pro golfer who gets a job at a country club to be like their professional pro golfer guy there or whatever, instructor, whatever. It turns out that some years earlier he got into some trouble and he's kind of on the outs when it comes to the golfing community. Um, so yeah, so athlete Mike Dermott, Playboy lifestyle has seen him kicked off the golf pro circuit when accused of match fixing. With the new name of Banning, he hustles from one country club and woman to another, leading to a high stakes tournament and a sudden death playoff for his life. That's kind of the movie. The movie does have the song "Eye of Love" by Quincy Jones. There's more to this movie than just that, but it is kind of um, Robert Wagner just being this playboy guy who's like wooing all of these women at this country club, but also trying to, I guess, fix his reputation as well. Um, yeah, it's fine. Yeah, there's more to the story than that, but I don't want to give it away. It's a movie I heard about for years and a movie that I had seen on DVD kicking around for a while. So this is getting, Blu-ray release, I think, for the first time. Let me check to make sure I'm not just making things up as I usually do. Yeah, Banning. This is the first time it's coming out on Blu-ray in August. So that's Banning. Um, let's see. There's one more here I did see. That's Crossplot. Okay, so Crossplot is interesting because it is essentially Roger Moore auditioning for James Bond before he was James Bond. I didn't make that up. Someone on Letterboxd said that, and I completely agree. So imagine just Roger Moore as James Bond. No, Roger Moore as John Hamm in Mad Men as James Bond. That's kind of what this movie is. So Suave advertising executive Gary Fenn, Roger Moore, is living the good life, but the good life turns bad when someone tries to kill a beautiful model and frame him for murder. Set in London during the swinging 60s, this action packed ride is from acclaimed film and theater director Alvin Rakoff, co-starring Belgian actress Claudie Lang, Martha Heyer, Francis Matthews, and Alexis Canner. Um, yeah, it sounds like something that is straight out of his TV series The Saint, which is kind of a James Bond esque type of thing. And this movie came out in when did it come out? 1969, I believe. So, and this was 4 years. Um, let's see, yeah, Crossplot came out in 1969. So this was 4 years before his first turn as James Bond in, I believe, Live and Let Die. So, they're very close to one another. And this film has all of those types of things like rooftop chases and action fight sequences and car chases and Roger Moore wearing a suit. It's got all of those things in it. So it's a precursor to all that stuff. A fun little caper. Fun little caper. So that is it from Imprint. So okay, we've got Imprint, we've got Umbrella down. Let's move over to stateside. Let's go stateside. Let's go with Severin. Severin had a nice little announcement recently. Severin, of course, doing what they do best, coming out with another one of their box sets. Another one of their box sets. So we've got Danza Macabra Volume 3, the Spanish Gothic Collection, 4-disc Blu-ray set, available for pre-order now. And the four films are Necrophagus from 1971, Cake of Blood from 1971, Cross of the Devil from 1974, and The Night of the Walking Dead from 1975. So we've got some 70s Spanish Gothic horror. The cover art for this looks incredible. Kind of a shot right out of Creature from the Black Lagoon, mixed with a little Frankenstein werewolfish type of stuff. Really cool. For those of you who have the first two box sets, obviously you're going to want to probably add this one to your collection as well. Unfortunately, these films are not easy to find to watch, so I wasn't able to watch them other than the first film, other than Necrophagus. Um, and the way in which they describe it is thus: the most misunderstood Spanish Gothic shocker of the early 70s can now be reassessed like never before. A young nobleman, Bill Kern, returns to his crumbling family castle only to learn that his wife has died giving birth to their stillborn child. But why is her coffin empty? What follows is a uniquely told shocker of grief, loss, dark secrets, and the hungers of the grave. Yeah, so it's a movie that is a zombie film mixed with a little bit of revenge plot, as you can tell from that little synopsis there. What this synopsis doesn't tell you is that this doctor was kind of obsessed with his work, and it's kind of one of the reasons why he neglected his family, and that's why they kind of passed away. But it's got all the hallmarks of kind of that time. The movie is also known as The Butcher of Binbrook and released in America by Independent International as Graveyard of Horror. I believe this is getting a 4K scan. As always, Severin is coming out with some special features. You get an audio commentary with Andy Marshall Roberts, host of the Nasty Pasty podcast. Something You've Never Seen. Appreciation by Angela Sala, head of programming at the Sitges Film Festival. And the first horror film in the world, Remembrance by Maria Pilar Rafaelis, daughter of Sitges Film Festival founder Antonio Rafaelis. The Cake of Blood from 1971 um, is uh, is a film, like I said, I did not get to see. So let me read the just quick synopsis here. With Spanish cinema still under the oppressive Franco regime, four filmmakers banded together to create a horror anthology that examined classic themes through transgressive perceptions. Directed by Maria Velez, Tarot stars Tarot stars Julian Ugart in a grim tale of fanaticism set in the Middle Ages. Eusebio Poncela and Marissa Paredes star in Victor Frankenstein, a unique take on Mary Shelley's classic, directed by Emilio Martinez Lazaro. Terror Among Christians, directed by Francesca Belmont, is a jolting vampire allegory set during Roman times. And then I think, Hami Shavari, co-writer of Vampiros Lesbos and future icon of new Spanish cinema, directs the twisted ghost story, The Dance or Emotional Survivals, starring Luis Sieges, now never available outside of Spain. Cake of Blood is now scanned in 4K. We got some audio commentaries. We got some other special features here. I won't read off everything, just in the interest of time, of course. So, The Cross of the Devil from 1974. This is directed by Paul Naschy. So if you have Paul Naschy, I'm not sure how to pronounce it actually, probably should have known that by now. If you have a bunch of his films that I believe Severin's put out so far, as well as I believe two volume collections put out by Shout Factory as well, or Shout Studios rather. So if you've got plenty of that, you kind of you know his vibe. You know his vibe. This is coming with audio commentary as well. This audio commentary is actually with Kim Newman. That's very interesting. So that's really cool. And I know the fourth film here I want to mention, The Night of the Walking Dead, because there's an audio commentary with Kat Ellinger, author of Daughters of Darkness. Kat Ellinger, I think, was also involved in producing this box set as well. I'm not quite sure. Don't quote me on that. I know, obviously, she had her hand in this audio commentary down here for the film Night of the Walking Dead. So, I believe she's had her hands in all of these box sets in a way. In a way, when it comes to all of this stuff, I feel like she's always around. I feel like Kat Ellinger is always around in some way, shape, or form. Her spirit is within all of these releases in some way, shape, or form. Anything that she puts her name on, anything she gets herself involved in is automatically of interest to me, and I would recommend to others as well. So that is Danza Macabra, Volume 3, the Spanish Gothic Collection, four disc box set, plenty of special features, great artwork, great artwork on the individual cases as well. For those of you, I guess, maybe a little interested, today is the birthday of both Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing. There's two Christopher Lee box sets. I've got one of them up there. And then, of course, there's a Peter Cushing box set that Severin's put out as well. So, this is right in time to announce this other box set with those box sets in hand, as well as the birthday of those two incredible, iconic gentlemen. So that is Severin. Let's take a look at the comments. So we've got some comments here. Once again, there's our friend Josie DeMarco, who new watches since last time. Regrouping, Revenge, Destroy All Monsters. My favorite year, Home Fries and Cold Weather. I think Destroy All Monsters, isn't that's a Godzilla film, I think. Maybe I should actually look that up before I start saying things. So Destroy All Monsters, or maybe that's something else. Yep, Destroy All Monsters is uh it's a kaiju film with, of course, the great Godzilla. I think he battles Ghidorah in that. Yeah, the monsters battle. They team up and battle Ghidorah. I watched all of those movies in the Showa box set from Criterion, which I really wish they would release another one. I'm waiting for a Heisei era box set before I start trying to track down all the Blu-rays from that era, which I think are all out of print now. The Heisei era and then the Millennium era, I think most of those are out of print. That's why it's leading me to believe some type of big re-release is coming. I mean, they might as well strike while the iron's hot now, with Godzilla -1 being a big hit that it was, with the new American Godzilla being a big hit as well, at least monetarily. And it does have its fans as well. I am actually one of them. For all of its issues and for what it isn't, I do enjoy those MonsterVerse movies. Um, let's see. Just checking out some of the comments here. Yeah, so yeah, I believe David, this was in reference to 10 Things I Hate About You, which was 2000. I think you're right. I think 99 I was thinking of something else. I probably was thinking of American Pie. Don't ask me why. No, 1999 was 10 Things I Hate About You, I guess. Yeah, I was right. I remember they tried to do a 10 Things I Hate About You TV series in 2009. I don't know if anybody remembers that. I or was it? Yeah, it was a TV series. I think it only lasted 1 season. Um, I don't really think that that kind of works as a TV series. I mean, I understand the idea of, like, setting it as a high school teen type of show with teen angst and all that kind of stuff. You can kind of stretch that premise, but it works so well just as a self-contained movie. You know what I mean? It worked so well at that time. Um, yeah, so let's move on now to someplace else. Although, where do we want to go? Where do I want to go? That's the one thing about doing this is I can kind of make up my own rules about where to go. So we just did two slates back to back. Let's cool things down a little bit with some individual things we've got here. So yeah, let's go to this film here. So let's go to Second Sight. Why not? Second Sight. So Second Sight is putting out a Bittersweet Life, a limited edition 4K Blu-ray. As we all know, Second Sight's limited edition 4K Blu-ray sets are incredible. Not really sets, but editions are incredible. The artwork looks amazing. The packaging's amazing. Special features, the picture quality, all that's good stuff. So, A Bittersweet Life is a movie that we've actually talked about here on Chasing Labels before. It's a movie that's been released before. This is coming out July 8th. Bittersweet Life is from 2005. It's a movie directed by Kim Ji-woon. Kim Ji-woon, being the director of I always forget. He did, um this is way too much to look at here. Let me go check IMDb right away. So Kim Ji-woon, I do wanna say I always forget. He directed the film, The Good, the Bad, and the Weird. That's his film. He also directed I Saw the Devil, yes, and then, of course, A Tale of Two Sisters. It I Saw the Devil and A Tale of Two Sisters. I know A Tale of Two Sisters Umbrella has put out already, and they've also put out an edition of A Bittersweet Life, and I know that because I have it. And I think we talked about this before. I think we did a whole video on this before when we had Ari Harrison on. He let us pick out stuff from the Umbrella store, and I went a little greedy, got very many things, which I still have stacked up here on the um on the couch that I'm sitting on, and one of them is A Bittersweet Life, and this is their kind of special edition of that. And this actually comes with like three director commentaries, which I know is a lot, uh, but they're all different with different people accompanying him on some on these discussions. So let me see what the difference is here with this set that they've got. Or this edition that Second Sight is coming out with. Obviously, that was just a regular Blu-ray that Umbrella put out, and this is going to be a 4K, as well as you can get the Blu-ray counterpart if you so choose to. So, I think it's coming with, yeah, it's got two commentaries, two commentaries with the director Kim Ji-woon, and actors as well as director of photography. It's got a new audio commentary by Pierce Conran and James Marsh. Making of Bittersweet Life with optional commentaries, which I know this has here. Deleted and alternate scenes with commentary. I believe this has it as well. Let me see. Yeah, the one thing that this is missing is the third commentary that this has. This has a third commentary with Kim Ji-woon and film critic Lee Dang-jin. The Second Sight edition does not have that, but I believe it has everything else, including a 120-page book with essays, as well as a rigid slipcase and six collector art cards. So, for those of you who don't have the Umbrella release and want this movie, this is the Second Sight one is pretty much the way to go. For those of you who've never seen the movie, the premise is a loyal gangster falls foul of his gang when he's assigned to keep watch over the young mistress of his crime boss. Things take a violent and bloody turn when he is unable to carry through on in order to dispatch the girlfriend and her new lover. Yeah, I talked about this movie rather in depthly when that Blu-ray from Umbrella came out. Really good film, really good film. Getting into kind of organized crime and things like that. Um, this guy who is assigned this really, what is considered probably a lesser job of watching over the mistress of, his boss. And when he doesn't fulfill his commitments to that, or when circumstances dictate otherwise, um, things go south. Things go south very quickly. You don't mess around with those types of situations. You really don't. Um, oh yeah. Let me just checking up comments again. Oh yeah, that's no problem, David. No problem. I get my years confused all the time, anyways. 99, 2000. Um, the older you get and the more distant you get from those years, things just, you know, change. Also, we don't care about math around here, really. I mean, this isn't math class anymore. Keep those days in the past. This time of year, I see everybody like graduating college or graduating high school and things like that, and it brings me back to all of those just awful times I had with just the anxiety of crunching for math exams and English papers and history exams and all this kind of stuff. It brings all that anxiety flooding back to me. So we won't be doing any math here. So we keep that all at bay. So let's see, where was I? Oh, yeah, Second Sight's release of A Bittersweet Life. Um, Once again, Second Sight has a great track record with their releases. Wholehearted, you know, endorsing that. So let's move away from there. Let's move on to another individual release, and this is by Milestone. And Milestone is a company we've talked a little bit about here and there. They're teamed up with Kino to for distribution's sake. So you can probably find a lot of Milestone releases on Kino's website. Sometimes they're included in those seasonal sales that they have, which are really great if you want to like just scoop up a bunch of cheaper Kino releases. And Milestone will sometimes sneak in there. Um, I know that because sometimes I see them, but I have another Milestone release here, and this is Piccadilly. So Milestone put out the movie Piccadilly, the I believe this silent film starring Anime Wong, and this is just I think the only Milestone release that I currently have is this one. So I know that they do pretty good work. They do pretty good work, and they put out very unique, very underseen films, um, undervalued films. Probably, I know there's not a lot of Anime Wong on Blu-ray at least. I know that Kino put out their Anime Wong box set, which I still need to get. My birthday is coming up. I may get that at some point. I'm always hoping that it'll sneak into one of their sales and I'll able to get it for cheap. But that's just me wishful thinking. Just me wishful thinking. But the movie that Milestone is putting out is a movie called Bless Their Little Hearts from 1983. An interesting, small, focused film. Um, yeah, it's very interesting. So it's a very neo-realistic film. Um, yeah, let me just read the premise of it here on Letterbox to give you a sense of what it is about. Let's see if I could scroll up through my diary on here. There it is. Bless Their Little Hearts. This is directed by Billy Woodbury. Charlie Banks, chronically unemployed, struggles to find dignity and meaning for life in poorer districts of South Central Los Angeles. So, right from that premise, you're getting something that is incredibly focused on thematically right away on the group of kind of the working poor, the working impoverished, but specifically in this case, it doesn't mention it here. This is an African American family dealing with that. So you get a little extra kind of thematic depth when it comes to racial issues of the time and racial issues really permeating through this day when it comes to the impoverished community and just the working poor and stuff like that. And the movie is shot, like I said, in a neo-realistic style, so it's very raw, very raw. It feels very John Cassavetes esque in that regard. It there's a lot of scenes that I feel like perhaps are improv or just kind of they just kind of go with what's going on in the scene. Um, Not very structured when it comes to plot, and I think that that's the point. This is supposed to be a slice of life film, and Bless Their Little Hearts is a unique of that. I believe it's part of kind of a black film renaissance of that time, of that era, of the 70s and the 80s, maybe kind of that post black exploitation era of cinema when things uh, maybe get a little more serious, if you will. At least that's from my impression of it. But the movie is available to stream right now on Canopy. It's available to stream on the Criterion channel. Obviously, this Blu-ray is coming out. When is this Blu-ray coming out? Actually, this Blu-ray is coming out July 23rd. July 23rd. I'm always bad with mentioning release dates. If there's something I've ever mentioned and I forget to mention the release date, just go to Blu-ray.com and they'll tell you when it's coming out or when it's come out. That's one good thing about that. So bless their little hearts. Very good film. Highly recommended if you're into kind of that raw, neo-realistic style of cinema. Um, yeah, it's really really good. So let's move on to Kino. Actually, why not? So we were just talking about Milestone. Milestone's teamed up with Kino. Let's just talk about Kino straight up. First, we'll get into kind of their general stuff, their stuff from their Kino Laurel Studio Classics line, because they have some regular stuff from their regular line that I want to talk about, which is the real highlight of Kino for me this week is that stuff. So, in the future, sometimes in the ethereal future, they will be putting out a 4K UHD of The General's Daughter, starring John Travolta, Madeline Stowe, James Cromwell, James Woods, Timothy Hutton, and this is a movie that came out in 1999, going back to 1999 again. It's a bit of a theme here. At 1999, directed by Simon West. Simon West, I think, is probably most known for directing Con Air with Nicolas Cage, as well as a bunch of other well-known actors. If you've seen the movie, you know. But this is his follow-up. This is the movie he did right after that, called The General's Daughter. Now, I remember The General's Daughter when it came out. I remember The General's Daughter. Um, I remember when The General's Daughter came out in 1999. Um, I remember seeing like TV spots, trailers for that, and I just remember kind of it being like a serious, thriller of a movie. It is very much is kind of a time capsule piece from a filmmaking perspective of that 1990s, thriller. Uh, so this movie is dealing with um, things going on a military base. Um, and right away, it may get comparisons to um, A Few Good Men, um, but it's not quite that type of film. So when the body of Army Captain Elizabeth Campbell is found on Georgia military base, two investigators, warrant officers Paul Brenner and Sarah Sunhill, that is um, John Travolta and Madeline Stowe, are ordered to solve her murder. What they uncover is anything but clear-cut, unseemly details emerge about Campbell's life, leading to allegations of a possible military cover-up of her death and involvement of her father, Lieutenant General Joseph Campbell, portrayed by James Cromwell. So, what do we have in here? We have uh, military political corruption going on. We've got misogyny going on within the military in the film as well. We've got, abuse and oppression of women going on within the military as well. For me, watching this movie, that's where I was very surprised about how much staying power the film has from that perspective. If anyone knows, and I won't go on a big soapbox here, um, those issues are very prevalent within the U.S. military going through straight to this day. There's a serious issue of those things happening in, I would say, all branches of the military. I'm just using it as a general thing. There have been documentaries about, assault on women and cover-ups and just, all this kind of thing. You know what I mean? And so this movie kind of takes that idea and, dials it up for movie's sake. And you get a pretty good, solid thriller from the 90s based off of that premise. Twists and turns, red herrings. It's a murder investigation. You get all of those things. The backdrop, the kind of the downfall a little bit of the movie is that sometimes John Travolta's good, sometimes he's not. You know what I mean? And then that's going to be, based off of your interpretation of the movie, your impression of the movie, the way you view the movie. I thought some scenes he's good, some scenes he's not good. Sometimes they gave him extra dialogue that I don't think he needed to have. But those are little like ticky tack types of things. Overall, decent 90s thriller. Perhaps some people remember it, perhaps some people don't. Interesting that it's getting a 4K UHD release. Going straight from Blu-ray to 4K UHD because I believe The General's Daughter has had a a Blu-ray release before, or maybe not. Maybe I'm thinking of another '90s thriller. Um, yeah, The General's Daughter did have a Blu-ray release in 2021, June 29, 2021, by Paramount. Okay, so this is part of that Paramount deal that Kino has. That makes a lot of sense now. See, all the pieces are coming together. Um, yeah, it is a serious issue movie. David, you're right. It is a very serious issue movie. Like I said, it's an issue that goes straight through to today. It's still something that people battle that's still a battleground issue in the military to this very day. We see horrific things happen on military bases all the time. Horrific stories. I mean, so many things, so many things. So that's why the movie has, like I said, some staying power to it. Um, yeah, so that's The General's Daughter. What else is going on with Kino? What isn't going on with Kino? That's the better question. So, they just announced the details about their release of In and Out, which I think we covered before. Steven and I covered that before. In and Out is coming out July 23rd. The General's Daughter, like I said, has no release date yet, so we could be doing this in a year from now and getting details on The General's Daughter for all we know. But In and Out is getting a 4K UHD release. It's a 2 disc edition with the 4K UHD disc as well as the Blu-ray disc. Brand new from a 4K, brand new master from a 4K scan of the 35 millimeter original camera negative. New commentary by the screenwriter. An interesting movie. Yet again, another film, kind of a time capsule piece of its time. Um, yeah, it's a movie we talked about before, so I won't spend too much time getting into it. But the film is directed by Frank Oz. I always like to kind of mention that. Of course, he directed the Dirty Rotten Scoundrels as well as the score, which I think Kino also put out a 4K release of as well of the score, which I believe was Marlon Brando's last film. So moving on from there, um, there's another movie here which I did not get to watch. I know Steven got to watch it once upon a time. Maybe he remembers, maybe he doesn't, but he's not here to say either way. But there's a um there's a Blu-ray release of this movie called Twisted coming out. And the reason why I want to mention it is because it's directed by Philip Kaufman. Philip Kaufman, of course, being the director of uh I almost said Do the Right Thing. That's not it. It's The Right Stuff. That's the movie. He's the director of The Right Stuff. Um, he's also the director of Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the one from the 70s. He was the writer on Raiders of the Lost Ark. He also was the writer on The Unbearable Lightness of Being. Um, he's someone whose work kind of comes along every once in a while. I like to mention him. Um, so Twisted is a movie that for some reason is not showing. Oh, there it is. It's on his IMDb. I was like, it's not on his IMDb. That doesn't make sense. But yeah, Jessica, whose father killed her mother and committed suicide, is a police officer. While investigating a murder, she finds herself in the center of her own investigation, where her former lovers start being murdered. Not a good place to be. Not a good place to be. Stars Ashley Judd, Samuel L. Jackson, and Andy Garcia. Um, that's a good trio. That's a good trio. Definitely something I still would want to watch. David Strathairn is in the film as well. One of the best character actors of our time. Every time he shows up, it's always great to see him on screen. So that's something I wanted to mention. So moving on from there, um, move past that. Oh, in the latest news today, um, there's going to be a 4K UHD release of The Sands of Iwo Jima, the 1949 war film starring John Wayne, John Agger, Adele Mara, Forrest Tucker, and Arthur Franz. The reason why I wanted to mention this is because um, I'm assuming they waited to announce this on Memorial Day for obvious reasons. The whole, veterans and war type of connection here and whatnot. Because I want to say that The Sands of Iwo Jima has gotten a Blu-ray release before. Sands of Iwo Jima. Let me look it up quickly on. That's not how you spell Iwo Jima. So The Sands of Iwo Jima. I think, yeah, so it's only gotten a Blu-ray release in France. Okay, for some reason I thought it got a Blu-ray release here. There's been so much of that post-war, like 1940s, 1950s, World War II films have gotten Blu-ray releases over the years. Some in good quality, some in not so good quality. I remember things like D-Day, and The Longest Day, those types of movies. I remember those getting Blu-ray releases well over a decade ago, but not looking very good, and always hoping that they would get a some type of remastered re-release. I know things like Bridge on the River Kwai have gotten a re-release in 4K now, actually. Um, so I've always wanted like those types of movies. I remember once upon a time I was at Best Buy. Oh goodness, this is probably 10 years ago, and they had a standee setup of Father's Day films, like Father's Day gift films, and they were all of those types of movies, like the John Wayne war films from the 40s, things like Midway and all this kind of stuff. It just like that's what you would get your father for Father's Day. You know what I mean? Like those, I guess those are dad movies, as they would call them now. Before the idea of dad movies were a thing. So that's what they kind of had them as. Heck, I probably bought some stuff for myself. Probably bought something for myself. I think they even had maybe The Grapes of Wrath as well. Not a war film, but still, I guess, a movie of that era. Yeah, but anywho, so The Sands of Iwo Jima. For those of you who don't know about Iwo Jima, so let me see, The Sands of Iwo Jima. Let me get a synopsis quickly. Um, yeah, John Wayne would do a lot of those movies uh, during his career, and it was either that or westerns. Uh, that's kind of what John Wayne is mostly known for. It was that westerns, like Civil War type pictures. That's kind of what his bread and butter was, really. Haunted by personal demons, Marine Sergeant John Stryker is hated and feared by his men, who see him as a cold-hearted sadist. But when their boots hit the beaches, they begin to understand the reason for Stryker's rigid form of discipline. And Stryker is portrayed by John Wayne. Yeah, Iwo Jima is a famous battle in the South Pacific during World War II. The famous picture of all of the Marines holding, putting up the flag on the mountain there. On that was on Iwo Jima. You ever hear of the Flags of Our Fathers, that book or that movie that was directed by Clint Eastwood? That's all about most of that's about Iwo Jima and those individuals in that photo. I read the book years ago, I think when I was in high school, and I kind of learned all about that stuff. But yeah, that's the Sands of Iwo Jima. So moving on from Kino Studio Lorber Classics, we're going to be moving on to Kino Lorber. So Kino Lorber straight up, that's what I call it, because there's really no other way to say it. There's Kino Classics, and then there's Kino Lorber Studio Classics. And Kino Lorber Studio Classics are um, those white cases that you see, and they say Kino Lorber Classics on them. Um, and then there's, the Kino Lorber Studio Classics, all the ones that we know of where they have all those sales that we all kind of dive in on. Like, for example, I have The Last Tycoon here. This is a, Kino Lorber Studio Classic film release. But they're putting out some interesting films. Well, they're putting out 3 films by the same director. And I watched all of these films and I was kind of blown away. To be frank. This is the director whose work I had never heard of before. It's a director whom I've never heard of before. And we've discovered some directors here on Chasing Labels whom Stephen and I had never heard of before. And all of a sudden became big fans of their work. I'm thinking of Johnny Toe right away. But these films are The Hairdresser's Husband, Yvonne's Perfume, and then The Girl on the Bridge. And these are all directed by where of course they don't have the director here. Of course they don't. Just to ruin my rhythm. Patrice Leconte. And these films are all different, yet I feel like there's some connective tissue with them. I'll go with the first one here, The Hairdresser's Daughter. It's coming out on Blu-ray July 9th from Kino. And this is a description: a newly restored masterpiece from famed director Patrice Leconte. The Hairdresser's Husband is a wildly erotic ode to wedded bliss, starring the legendary Jean Rochefort and an incandescent Anna Guyana. It follows the life of young Antoine, who was obsessed with the bewitching beautician who cut his hair. Since then, his single ambition in life has been to marry a hairdresser. As an adult, Antoine meets a woman who seems to be the perfect incarnation of his childhood fantasies. He promptly marries her and then spends most of his daylight hours sitting in her shop, watching her every move. They're so crazy in love. Um, yeah, and they're so madly in love, and you just see them kind of live their marital bliss. And of course, with that, life is never as easy as that. You know what I mean? Life is never as that simple or as that happy. It's never that, that wonderful all of the time. But this movie is so refreshing in that regard to see someone kind of live out their dreams in real life. You know what I mean? Someone who, had this kind of childlike, immature, naive dream of being obsessed with a hairdresser, which on the surface sounds kind of, oh, you're ridiculous, if you will. But then to carry that through to adulthood and then finally achieve that at a middle age, in middle age, it really just goes to show you that it's never too late to pursue your dreams. It's never too late to pursue your ultimate happiness. Life is never too late. You know what I mean? Just seize what you love when you want it. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? In good moral value. You know what I'm saying? In this case, it being love and marriage and things like that. And the movie is so well acted, well directed, well told, and of honestly of like Cinema Paradiso and the movie Melina, and as well as Wild Strawberries. It's got all of those types of vibes to it because it's someone kind of taking stock of their life, but also having a wonderment within it of really profound life lessons as well. Really a beautiful, wonderful film. Honestly astonishing. I can't recommend this film enough. These are all French films, so you will have to read subtitles, but trust me, it's so worth it. Amazing film. So that's The Hairdresser's Husband. Next film is Yvonne's Perfume. This is coming out July 16th on Blu-ray from Kino. Obviously also directed by Patrice Leconte. So Yvonne's Perfume is a mysterious and romantic drama of desire. This is a little more melodramatic. This is on a little more melodramatic side. In the early 1950s, on the shore of a lake wedged between France and Switzerland, a trio of holiday travelers meet, clash, and fall in and out of friendship and love. Adapted from the novel Via Triste by Nobel Prize winner Patrick Modiano, it follows Victor, the it follows Victor, a deserter escaping his past who lusts after the beautiful actress Yvonne. Their push pull flirtation attracts the attention of kind of her caretaker, her overseer, he's not like a family member. He's just like her caretaker, person who watches after her. Dr. Menth is his name, played by Jean-Pierre Mariel, who can't help but insert himself into their tryst. Their idyllic holiday can't last forever. And that is kind of, once again, this pursuit of otherworldly things um, doesn't last very long. You know what I mean? And also, it has its ups and downs. This type of passionate love and lust and young love and lust, specifically in Yvonne's Perfume, it's a roller coaster ride. It's a roller coaster ride. It can be as passionate as all heck, and it could be just as aloof as air. You know what I mean? It can go either way, and this movie is very much in that regard. And it's an interesting journey of these three characters and their relationships with one another, and just how in a very short amount of time, all so many things can happen. So that's Yvonne's Perfume. And I don't think it's as quite a good a film as The Hairdresser's Husband, but still very good. Very good. And then you have the third film here by Patrice Leconte, and his most stylish film, I think, is The Girl on the Bridge. Came out in 1999. So you got a movie from 1990 in the Hairdresser's Husband, a movie in 1994, Yvonne's Perfume, and then you got a movie in 1999, which is our lucky number of the day, is 99. Is The Girl on the Bridge. This is coming out July 23rd. I kind of wish these would all come out on the same day. It'd be nice to get them all at once, but I guess I got to wait a week in between them. So this movie is entirely in black and white. Gorgeous cinematography, stunning cinematography in this. So let's see. It follows. Uh, Yeah, shot in gorgeous black and white, it follows the whirlwind courtship of carnival knife thrower Gabor and lonesome wanderer Adele. Despairing of her future, Adele leaps into the Seine before being rescued by Gabor and unexpectedly becomes the new assistant and target for his act. Um, and what is interesting about their relationship is that for some mystical, magical, otherworldly reason, they're each other's like good luck charms. Like when they're together, good things happen for them. The act is very successful. Things go so well for them. They're traveling around. The show's going well. All of these things. When they're apart and when they're distant, their lives kind of fall apart. Very interesting. The film never really delves into why that is. It's kind of like serendipity, really. But yet again, this movie is dealing with human relationships and connection and things like that. Things that a hopeless romantic like myself dives headfirst into. You know what I mean? This is a hopeless romantic kind of dream and nightmare, all of these movies, because it shows you both the wonderment of love and human relationships as well as the reality of it all. You know what I mean? And it's like I said, there's ups and downs. There's ups and downs, but when I said stylish, I mean this movie is incredibly stylish. The black and white cinematography. There are sequences of this film, specifically the ones when they're performing their act, are done in such a way where there's more going on than just him throwing knives at a board. There's there's a relationship and a tie between these 2 that has a je ne sais quoi that you just kinda have to watch on screen to really experience. It's movie magic, really. It's movie magic. So these 3 films are amazing. So watch all of these movies, if you can, or get these Blu-rays from Kino. So that is once again, the Patrice Leconte films of The Hairdresser's Husband, Yvonne's Perfume, and The Girl on the Bridge. I will be adding all of these. So yeah, those are the highlights of this slate for me. Um, and so let me take a little drink here because that's a lot to go through in a little bit of while, and then we'll dive into Eureka. Eureka, we'll dive back into the slates. So Eureka had their August slate release. I'm assuming that with Eureka releasing this week, we will hopefully be getting Arrow next week. They usually go hand in hand. They usually go hand in hand. And so Eureka had 3 releases, but I do specifically want to talk about 2 of them. So we had A Man Called Tiger, Wolves, Pigs, and Men, and then we had a Laurel and Hardy, The Silent Years, 1927. Very interesting here. How Eureka is releasing silent films here and there. We just got The Cat and the Canary. We just got a US release actually, which I thought was very, very cool. I want to say that um, this Laurel and Hardy set is a Region B set. Um, let me get rid of some tabs here so I don't get confused. So we've got, like I said, Eureka. Let me go into the Laurel and Hardy set because that's the one that kind of piques my interest the most. Um, Standing tall alongside Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin as pioneers of cinematic comedy, Stan Laurel and Oliver Hardy are 2 of the most beloved comedians in the history of moving pictures. Having acted alongside each other for the first time in 1921, they officially teamed up later in the decade in a series of shorts made for Hal Roach, launching a wildly successful partnership that would survive into the sound era and last for another quarter of a century. The collection captures the duo's earliest misadventures on screen, chronicling their journey from their first films together, The Lucky Dog and the aptly titled 45 Minutes to Hollywood, to dawn of their official partnership in 13 shorts released throughout 1927. So there's a total of 15 shorts in this collection here, which is a lot. I think they're all getting 2K restorations. Yeah, all getting 2K restorations. This is coming out August 19th. I think these are all coming out August 19th, actually. And I just want to see, yeah, it is a 2-disc set, which kind of makes sense. I mean, they're like 18 to 20-minute shorts. So it would make sense that they would be on, 2 discs or so. So let me go into, um, yeah, so we've, like I said, 2K restorations. Um, let me go into what's all entailed on here. So the set contains the following shorts: Lucky Dog, 45 Minutes from Hollywood, Duck Soup, Sleeping Wives, Love 'Em and Weep, Why Girls Love Sailors, With Love and Hisses, uh, Sailors Beware, Do Detectives Think, Flying Elephants, Sugar Daddies, The Second 100 Years, Call of the Cuckoo, Putting Pants on Philip, and The Battle of the Century. So those are all the shorts in here. I have to admit, I haven't seen a lot of Laurel and Hardy's work. I It's something I want to give into. Was something I want to dive into at some point. Especially specifically, I want to start, of course, with their silent era stuff and move forward. That's kind of the way I like to dive into certain iconic individuals within cinema history. I do want to check. I believe there was a Laurel and Hardy box set that was put out by. Actually, there's a few Laurel and Hardy box sets. So we've got the Laurel and Hardy Year One box set put out by Flicker Alley, which contains films from 1921 to 1951. That was put out last September of 2023. And then we've got, I want to say, Laurel and Hardy. Um, yeah, we have the early solo films. Yeah, we have Laurel or Hardy, early solo films of Stan Laurel and Oliver Hardy, also put out by Flicker Alley. These are films from 1914 to 1926. This came out in January of 2021. All right, so now let me get to the one I actually remember. um, there's Laurel and Hardy, the definitive restorations, and this is put out by Kit Parker Films. And these films are from 1927 to 1937. This has 21 movies. This came out in 2020. I remember people talking about this when it came out. I remember specifically Brian Sauer from Just the Discs talking about this. Um, yeah, I believe he got this at the time. Um, yeah, so there's what with this set that's coming out from Eureka, there's 4 Laurel and Hardy sets, so plenty of Laurel and Hardy movies and shorts and things to go around. Oh, I got to catch up. I got to catch up on getting some of these. I'm always behind. I'm always behind when it comes to all these things. It's there's just never enough time to catch up. There's never enough money to catch up. There's never enough shelf space to put all these things on. Luckily, with chasing labels here, we try to keep up with at least letting people know what's out there. All of these Laurel and Hardy sets are out there. Um, all these other things are out there. So at least people have some semblance of knowing what's out there to get. So that is the Eureka Entertainment Laurel and Hardy set. The other movie I wanted to talk about was A Man Called Tiger, starring Jimmy Wang Yu from One Armed Swordsman, and directed by Lo Wei, the man behind the smash hit Bruce Lee vehicles The Big Boss and The Fist of Fury. A Man Called Tiger is a martial arts extravaganza released at the height of an international kung fu craze, better known as 1973. So Chin Fu is a former martial artist who suspects his father's apparent suicide was actually a cold-blooded murder. His desire for answers and revenge leads him to Japan, where he becomes entangled with the Yakuza. With the aid of his fellow countrymen, Lu Han Ming, and a nightclub hostess, Chin Fu sets out to infiltrate Tokyo's underworld, expose a criminal conspiracy, and uncover his father's true fate by any means necessary. Um, long rumored to have been planned as the third collaboration between Lo Wei and Bruce Lee before Lee made his directorial debut with The Way of the Dragon. A Man Called Tiger instead became a vehicle for another martial arts superstar in Jimmy Wang Yu. This is a Golden Harvest film. So if you're wondering if it's Golden Harvest versus the Shaw Brothers, it's a Golden Harvest film. The way I watched this movie is someone uploaded it to YouTube in 6 parts. So there's 5 15-minute parts and 1 1-minute part. Don't ask me why there's 1 1-minute part. But anywho, the movie's only like 75 minutes long. It's super short, cuts to the chase. Actually, this will tell you right here. There's a new 2K restoration of the original Hong Kong theatrical cut, which is 79 minutes long. So I was close. I was close. And there's a new 2K restoration of the extended export version of 112 minutes. Okay. Of course, you get the original audio. There's 2 audio commentaries here, one by Frank Zhang. And then there's another one here by action cinema experts Mike Leader and Arn Venema. Of course, you get the limited edition booklet, which has writing in it, limited edition slipcover as well, limited edition poster that comes with it, all the usual stuff you get from Eureka. Speaking of which, I'll say I thought I had some Eureka stuff here on the couch that I could show off. I probably do, but in the interest of time, I'll move on. So that is the kind of the two Eureka titles I want to talk about. The other film I didn't get to watch, so I don't know much about it. I think it's dealing once again a Yakuza film, which is pretty cool. And that film would be Wolves, Pigs, and Men. So that's three from Eureka Entertainment. And I guess where does that leave us with now? Let me see. Let me check my notes. I think that leads us to Criterion. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Let's go to Criterion. Why not? We've been here a little while. We've been here a little while. So let's see what Criterion has for their August titles. After having such a hot release slate for June and July, I think we're settling down a little bit, even though August is still a hot month weather-wise, depending on where you live. This is a little bit of a cooler release slate from Criterion. We've got 5 films. We've got 2 Albert Brooks films. We've got a Martha Coolidge film. We got a re-release of a Bernardo Bertolucci film, and we've got a double feature here by Kira Muratova. So let me just say what all these films are. So we've got Mother by Albert Brooks. We've got Real Life, also by Albert Brooks. We have Not a Pretty Picture by Martha Coolidge. The Last Emperor by Bernardo Bertolucci. And then we have a double feature of Brief Encounters and The Long Farewell by Kira Muratova. Let's start with some Albert Brooks stuff. Let's start with Real Life. So I believe this is the directorial debut of Albert Brooks. I think many people know who Albert Brooks is. I don't know if I need to kind of explain myself. He, of course, Albert Brooks is a comedian, actor. He's been in many movies and many things since the 1970s, including Saturday Night Live, I believe. So this is his first kind of foray into directing. This came out in 1979. The movie's titled Real Life. And it's a movie way ahead of its time. So it's meta, and it's kind of a play on what we know now as reality TV. So, decades before reality television reigned supreme, there was Albert Brooks' debut feature, Real Life, a brilliantly deadpan, stylistically innovative satire about the perils and pitfalls of trying to capture the truth on film. The writer-director plays Albert Brooks. He's playing himself, kind of. Well, a narcissistic Hollywood filmmaker version of himself. Who plans to spend the year in Phoenix embedded with Warren and Jeanette Yeager, portrayed by Charles Grodin and Francis Lee McCain, and their 2 children, deploying an arsenal of cutting-edge equipment, including the over-the-head Entonnoir 226 XL camera to capture an American family's ordinary day-to-day, chronicling the project's disastrous fallout as the meddlesome Albert can't help getting too close to his subjects. This pioneering mockumentary is more relevant than ever amid today's media landscape. That is quite a description on the Criterion website, but it's all accurate. This movie is, like I said, way ahead of its time. Meta. It's reality TV before reality TV, or at least poking fun at reality TV before reality TV became a thing. And what you get here is Albert Brooks playing this guy who wants to make this reality show, or this reality documentary, actually, and just documenting the daily life of this family. And he wants to do it, I think, for like for a specific amount of time. I can't remember how long it is, but he wants to do it for a specific amount of time and kind of just document it and then turn it into a documentary. And it just shows the comedic pitfalls of trying to make that happen. You get too close to your subjects. You try to manipulate things when you're not supposed to. They've got these ridiculous camera guys who have these giant helmets on, and the faceplate in front is a camera, but they can't see or hear anything. And they're just walking around with these giant cameras on their faces. And what's fascinating about that is today, we literally all walk around with cameras in our hands, with our cell phones and stuff. So it's something straight out of today, really, just in a comedic, over the top way. And of course, it's a complete and utter disaster. The movie has a lot of deadpan, satirical humor. If that's not quite your thing, maybe you won't quite vibe with this movie. But if you can kind of go with it for what it is, I think you'll have a good time with it. Um, you know what I mean? Like comedy is so subjective. But this release here, is getting a new 4K digital restoration, a new interview with Albert Brooks, new interview with actor Francis Lee McCain. Unfortunately, Charles Grodin passed away a few years ago, so we don't have a new interview with him. Um, yeah, so it's very interesting stuff. Um, cool. I'm actually pretty excited about that. There's two other Albert Brooks films in the Criterion collection, Lost in America, which I actually do have, and then Defending Your Life is another Albert Brooks film. I think he only directed, I want to say 8 films. I want to say 8 films so far in his career. Um, and I think Criterion has put out half of them. Let me see, Albert Brooks. I'm going to his IMDb now just to make sure. Once again, don't want to talk out of turn. Let's see. Yeah, 8 films. That's it. That's all he's directed. So Criterion's put out 4 of them. Um, Yeah, so let me get over to the other Albert Brooks film, which is a lot more traditional, kind of a safer film, but I also still think has its merits. So this is a movie called Mother, starring Albert Brooks and Debbie Reynolds. This is a movie from 1996. 1996. Reeling after her second divorce and struggling with writer's block, sci-fi novelist John Henderson, Albert Brooks, resolves to figure out where his life went wrong and hits on an unorthodox solution, moving back in with his relentlessly disapproving, cheerfully passive-aggressive mother, Debbie Reynolds, whose favorite son has always been John's younger brother, Jeff, portrayed by Rob Morrow. It's an experiment that, however harebrained, delivers surprising results. Brooks's film perfectly blends the writer-director star's biting wit with insight and inviting warmth, while giving him a formidable foil in the delightful Reynolds, triumphant in a comeback role that's equal parts caustic and charming. So what you've got here is a mother-son, like, dysfunctional family comedy with Albert Brooks and Debbie Reynolds, and they both play it rather realistically, realistically to that specific type of mother-son relationship. He's trying to figure out, he thinks that his writer's block and issues in his life have to do with his relationship with his mother, and he's trying to figure all of those things out while Debbie Reynolds is kind of rather aloof to the whole thing. She's rather like she's just going along with it just to go along with it. She kind of really doesn't care. And that's part of like who she is as a character. There's great comedic moments in it of like, them going to the mall and shopping together and just how weird all of that interaction is and funny and odd all of the interaction is, and going to the supermarket with your mom and like figuring out why she's buying certain things when she should be buying other things and all this kind of stuff. It's kind of something that's straight out of one's life, really, if you think about it in some way, shape, or form. It's a fine film. I thought it was entertaining. Unfortunately for me, I think the movie kind of falls on its face a little bit in terms of like the conclusion of this all. I was kind of going along for this little fun mom and son ride of figuring out the relationship and things like that, and the movie just kind of ends. It really does. It's kind of falls on its face a little bit, but it's a fun little thing. It's nice to see Debbie Reynolds on screen again. It really is. So yeah, that's not a bad film. Not a bad film. But moving on there, let's actually before we do, let me see if there's what we have here for special features. New interview with Robert with Mike what's it? New interview with Albert Brooks. Do interview with actor Rob Morrow, teaser directed by Brooks. Yeah, new digital restoration approved by Albert Brooks. I think the other one was approved by Albert Brooks as well. There's an essay in here as well. So that's 2 more Albert Brooks films. So now moving on to the Martha Coolidge film, Not a Pretty Picture. What a interesting movie. This is a fascinating introspective film, a film that is unfortunately incredibly contemporary in its themes and certain things that it goes through. So, trailblazing filmmaker Martha Coolidge. People probably know Martha Coolidge most specifically for the movie Valley Girl, that with Nicolas Cage that came out several years later. But Martha Coolidge had been working in the industry in some ways beforehand. But Not a Pretty Picture is you'll get it here. It's kind of this hybrid documentary and reenactment. Um, I'll just read the description. Maybe it'll better explain it than I could. Trailblazing filmmaker Martha Coolidge made her feature debut with this unflinchingly personal hybrid of documentary and fiction, centered on an intense reenactment of Coolidge's experience of rape in her adolescence. The film casts Michelle Manenti, also a survivor, as the director's younger self and observes the actor and her castmates as they engage in a profound dialogue about what it means to recreate these traumatic memories and about their attitudes concerning consent and self blame. A high stakes experiment in metacinema that broke new ground with its uncompromising examination of date rape. Not a Pretty Picture brings a stunning immediacy to questions about the on screen representation of sexual violence and the limits of artistic catharsis. So, obviously, a movie dealing with something incredibly serious. Unfortunately, like I said, incredibly contemporary. And this movie came out in 1975. 1975, we're still dealing with these discussions that they're having in this film. They're still dealing with, we're still discussing them to this very day. To this very day. And the movie is incredibly meta about it. It's a movie that it's not really about, the movie's not trying to depict a plot or a story. It's more about having a conversation about these things and the effects of it all. Really a unique film, truly unique. You get moments of reenactments and you get moments of people talking about the reenactments and talking about what the reenactments are about, what they are depicting and how one feels about those depictions, about those actions, about the events. Um, Really powerful, powerful film, and it's incredibly raw filmmaking as well. Thinking once again, think of like a John Cassavetes, that level of raw, like early Cassavetes, raw filmmaking, low budget filmmaking, um, something that you would see like kind of like a student film level of filmmaking. That's this type of film. Really fascinating. A movie I had actually never heard of until watching it for the podcast. Yeah, this is a movie that's going to be, I think, I hopefully talked about more and uh, definitely something to add to many people's collections. So it's getting a new 4K digital restoration. There's an interview with Coolidge conducted by filmmaker Allison Anders. Very interesting. I actually really want to see that. Old Fashioned Woman, a documentary by Coolidge about her grandmother. Interesting as well. And then there's also an essay on here by Molly Haskell. Yeah, very interesting. I believe, where did I watch this? Let me go check my letterboxd right away, just so I can give people a sense of um where to watch this film if they're interested in it. Um, let's see. I want to say, yeah, I want to say the Criterion Channel, but perhaps not. Let's see. No, it's not. Actually, unfortunately, it's not streaming anywhere. That's why this Blu-ray is kind of super important. It probably should be streaming, but it's not. Yeah, I've got to get more Martha Coolidge in my collection. I still don't own Valley Girl, and I know you. Speaking of Eureka, Eureka put out a nice edition of that I kind of want to get my hands on as well. I know that Shout Factory put out one a few years ago, but I think the Eureka release has some extra features that the Shout Factory doesn't have. Something like that. Something like that. So yeah, that's Not a Pretty Picture. That's kind of like the crown jewel of this release slate, in my opinion. The Last Emperor we've talked about. It's a movie that it's an upgrade of a Blu-ray that they put out before. Arrow just put out a Blu-ray release of this. Actually, didn't Arrow put out a 4K of this release? Hold on. Let me see. The Last Emperor. Last Emperor. Yeah, The Last Emperor had, yeah, it was a 4K release by Arrow. I remember because I think our buddy Scott Saslow worked on the art for that. Um, So, yeah, so so this is kind of, I think, just a re-release of that Blu-ray, but with obviously better picture quality because this was an early Blu-ray. This was probably one of the first Blu-rays that Criterion ever put out in 2008. That's how old the Blu-ray is. And if I remember correctly, let me check the special features on that Blu-ray. Oh wow, that's pretty old. Um, Actually quite stacked for a Blu-ray release from back in that time frame. But this is getting a plethora of kind of, follow up, not follow up, but um, crossover, uh, carrying over. That's what I meant to say. Carrying over. So it's a 4K digital restoration. Um, 218-minute television version of the film. If the movie wasn't already long enough, you can have it in much longer length. There's two documentaries about the making of the film. There's an archival interview with Bernardo Bertolucci, interview with composer David Byrne, and cultural historian Ian Baruma. There's an essay in here. There's all kinds of stuff. But if you have the Blu-ray, you kind of understand just the package that you're going to get here with this. I've always loved this movie, The Last Emperor. I've seen it several times. It's probably one of the first Blu-rays I ever bought from Criterion. I still have it in my collection. It's a Best Picture winner, if I remember correctly. It's based off of a book, which I've always wanted to read. And yeah, it's about the last emperor of China. That's what the movie's about. Um, beautiful film. Just visually beautiful film. Probably looks amazing in 4K. I do not have the Arrow release, but I'm pretty sure that probably looks amazing in 4K. Um, when it comes to the difference between the Arrow release and this release, I'm not quite sure. In terms of special features, usually Arrow kind of does their own thing with their special features. So you would have to kind of look at that. But usually the special features that are on the Criterion are exclusive to them. So you may have to have both releases to get everything. I'm not quite sure. I'm just kind of talking on a turn when it comes to that. But let's move on to the last Criterion announcement, and this is the double feature: Brief Encounters slash The Long Farewell, two films by Kira Muratova. So I want to say at least one of these has had a Blu-ray release before. Let me see, or at least yes. So Brief Encounters has had a Studio Canal release from last year. And I know that because I think I watched it and we talked about it. Yes. Nadia is a young woman who travels to meet the noted geologist Maxim. She takes a job as a household maid before discovering Maxim is romantically involved with the town official Valentina. Ivan, oh boy. Ivanovan, oh boy. Ivanovian. That was rough. That was real rough. I apologize. The heartbroken Nadia departs before Maxim can return, leaving him and Valentina to pursue their romance. Um, yeah, so this has a Studio Canal release, and then I think the other one also may have a Studio Canal release as well, The Long Farewell, or at least it has some type of release. Let me check. The Long Farewell. Uh, Actually, the Long Farewell had a Blu-ray release from Studio Canal last year as well. A single mother is confused by the changes in her teenage son who has become distant since spending summer vacation with his father. Um, yeah, so the movie both dealing about relationships and kind of coming to terms with things not being what you expected or things changing. I've seen both of the movies, and that's kind of the general gist I get from them. Uh, Brief Encounters came out in 1967. The Long Farewell came out in 1971. They're both getting new 4K digital restorations. There's interviews with Scarlett Elena Gorfunkel and Isabel Jacobs. Archival interview with director Kira Muratova. I believe all of those are the same features that were on the Studio Canal releases, I believe. So you're not really missing out on anything there. This is only a Blu-ray release, whereas I believe the other films I talked about, actually no, Not a Pretty Picture is just a Blu-ray release. The Last Emperor is just is a 4K release. Mother is a Blu-ray release. No, Mother is a 4K release. Real Life is a 4K release. Okay, so we've got one, two, three 4K releases and two Blu-rays from Criterion. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. But back to the Brief Encounters and the Long Farewell. Yeah, two really good films. Um, yeah, they're uncompromising, uncategorizable. These are both Ukrainian films. Nobody made films like Kira Muratova, uncompromising and uncategorizable. The Ukrainian iconoclast, that's a great word, withstood decades of censorship to realize her singular vision in hypnotically beautiful, expressionistically heightened films that remain unique in their ability to evoke complex interior worlds. Her first two solo feature films, Brief Encounters and The Long Farewell, are fascinatingly fragmented portraits of women navigating work, romance, and family life with a mix of deep yearning and playful pragmatism. Long suppressed by Soviet authorities, these films became legendary along with their maker, and they now make their revelatory introduction to this most fearlessly original of artists. Yeah, so culturally significant, culturally important works from a director whose work was obviously suppressed. Suppressed, being that Ukraine was under the Iron Curtain for so long, and all of those political things and whatnot. Um, yeah, I highly recommend checking out both of these films as well. This is, like I said, this is a cooler slate from Criterion, but a good slate, I would say, a good slate. Um, yeah, so that's it from Criterion. Um, one last thing before we venture out here on chasing labels or spy number 140, I do want to say that the Vinegar Syndrome halfway to Black Friday sale has been going on all along this past weekend. I hope maybe many of you are fortunate enough to partake in it. I know money and the economics are what they are now, very difficult. So get what you can get when you can. You know what I mean? Whatnot. I do want to do some due diligence here about talking about a little bit of what they're up to. I did partake a little bit. I actually caught up on a lot of the Fun City editions that I hadn't had yet in my collection, trying to catch up on that catalog of films and releases. But I did want to talk a little bit about what they've released, what they unveiled this past Friday night. New VSAs and the Gelser video releases: Lifeline, The Instructor, and The Ripper. New, and let's see what else they got here. New limited edition slipcovers for Sweet Sugar and Red Mob. Plus about a bunch of new stuff as well. Um, yeah, so they announced, they unveiled a couple of unique films. Um, yeah, they also have a bunch of the stuff on sale. It was stuff only from before 2024. So basically stuff all the way up through the end of last year, which is pretty par for the course when it comes to these Vinegar Syndrome halfway to Black Friday sales. Hopefully you guys kind of dove in and picked up some stuff before things went out of stock, or limited editions when went out of stock. All that kind of stuff. Um, they also, yeah, they also have the secret Vinegar Syndrome releases were Invasion USA, starring Chuck Norris, Criminally Insane, and Satan's Black Wedding. What a title! What a title! So I wanted to make sure to kind of mention Vinegar Syndrome, because by the time we reconvene for episode or spy number 141, we will have a new slate of Vinegar Syndrome and Vinegar Syndrome partner label stuff to go through. June 1st is fastly approaching. May went by super quick. So let me get out of here. Let me see if there's anything else to go over before we go. I don't believe so. I've been talking for over an hour and a half straight. That's enough for me. The one thing you do not get used to when it comes to doing this solo, is having to talk so much by yourself. If you do not like the sound of your own voice, I do not not recommend podcasting yourself. But let's see, what do we have in the slate here for chasing labels? We just did our unwatched pile number 13. That is now up with our friend Johnny Pomato. We talked about a couple of movies we've taken off our unwatched pile and pairing them up with something. Um, So we will be doing another unwatched pile next month as well. So if you're missing Steven, he is back with doing the unwatched pile stuff. And yeah, that is kind of about it for now from us here at Chasing Labels. Um, so you can follow the podcast at pretty much any place podcasts are available: Apple Podcast, Google Play, Spotify. Of course, here on YouTube, for the Chasing Labels YouTube channel, we'll have these live streams that I've been doing plus other stuff. It was an interesting episode tonight. I hope all of you are listening in the future. Thank you for listening. Thank you for the support. I greatly appreciate it. No matter when you listen to it, no matter when you watch, as long as we get the views and get the listens, it's all that really matters in the end of this all. But yeah, hopefully all of you are doing well, and hey, keep on watching those movies because I know I will.